to another awesome episode of the Course of Action podcast. My guest today is former Marine Chris Whittemore. Chris, how you doing?
Doing good, sir. How are you?
I'm good. Hey, thanks so much for reaching out and jumping on here with me. And we were kind of discussing offline. This is a last minute type of thing, and you caught my last day of availability before I cut it all off, so I could edit and get all these episodes done. So I'm glad we could sneak it in, and we can get you in on the schedule for January release.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Start the new year off with a bang. That's perfect.
Absolutely. So let's talk about you a little bit. Former Marine.
Okay.
Afghanistan, Iraq, but you were a scout sniper first, right?
Yeah. Weird the way it all worked out. Before rejoining, actually, I did a little early stint from 95 to 99, which not anyone who was in the military back then or had family, friends, yada, yada, yada. Not a whole lot was going on during that time. A lot of deployments to, Okinawa, Japan, Mount Fuji, Thailand, all that fun stuff. So I got out, moved in with my wife down here in Houston, Texas, became a Texas State Trooper in 2003 to about 2004. Basically right after the initial, I don't want to call it the 3-week push, but that push that went on. Yep. And I was watching the battles on TV, just like everyone else. And I was like, I've got a lot of friends that are still in. So about a year into law enforcement work, I was like, no, this is not for me. I belong back in the military. So I made I don't want to call it a critical mistake, but I made the recruiter's dream and went in and told them, I don't care what my job is, where I'm stationed, I just want back in.
I'm putting the uniform back on.
I'm putting it on, and I don't care where you send me. And he was, yay, so.
That's the most beautiful words a recruiter could ever hear is, I'm back, baby.
I'm back, and you don't have to do anything. And he even had me do the paperwork on the computer to get ready for MEPS and everything. He was just like, hey, this isn't your first rodeo. You know what's up. Mm-hmm. Get to it. So the time came back in, orders, infantry, 29 Palms, California. Had no idea where that was. I was like, where is that? And he's like, here's a map. He's like, right there, in the middle of nowhere, about 45 minutes north into the desert from Palm Springs. So up in the hills. The Army was nice enough to say, you know what, this place is so horrible, it's uninhabitable. The Marines are like, perfect, we'll set up a base there. So the Army didn't want it, but the Marines are like, hey, why not? And now it's, it's growing just like anywhere else. It's a huge training opportunity for anyone getting ready to go to Iraq and Afghanistan. Got there and, a lot of younger guys. I was 25, 26 coming back in, and these guys were, 18, 19. 20 just returning back from their first deployment. And I said, well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right. And just so happened the unit, there was, always that transition. There's just like in any job, next man up kind of thing. And they had an NDOC for the Scout Sniper platoon. So I was like, well, you know what? Watched all the cool, like Tom Berenger movies that are completely unrealistic. Watched all that fun, read the Carlos Hathcock books, all that good stuff. And I was like, you know what? I was like, this is going to be awesome. This is exactly what I want to do. I'm going to go sneaking around in the jungle, not even thinking like, oh, Iraq, not a whole lot of jungles in Iraq. And so I did the NDOC and got selected. And it kind of started the whirlwind of events as far as deploying and things like that. So
what was it like? What was it like being a scout sniper? Is it like, first of all, is it like what the movies show it to be?
No, not at all.
Of course.
It's exciting because you're operating in a much smaller group. We would go out as like a 6-man team, the shooter, the spotter, and then the security team. And that would be the cool aspect, because instead of going out in like a convoy of vehicles or a giant platoon or, something like that. You're operating in a small little group out in the city of Iraq or Afghanistan or wherever it's going to be, and you carry all your gear that you could possibly need for. Usually it was a 3-day, but it always turned into 6 days. It just inevitable. They're like, "Oh, great, you guys are already out there. We're going to extend you guys out. We'll throw a box of MREs and a case of water over the wall 3 houses down and just go down there at nighttime and grab it and go back to your little spot." I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
fantastic.
thanks, Chris.
Yeah, appreciate that. But the exciting aspect, and it's kind of a morbid exciting, is I tell friends and family, I'm like, go down the next city street that you go down, look up into the skyline or the buildings, and all those windows. There could be, in kind of the wrong timing with all the shootings and everything else that are going on in this country, but there could be a sniper in any one of those windows, and the psychological aspect of it,
Yeah.
and knowing that we had that psychological impact on the enemy, just like they had on us, because they had the Chestians and stuff like that operating throughout the city. It's pretty wild. But those all that gear in the backpack or in the rucksacks gets heavy. Like 3 days of ammo, security supplies, all that stuff. You had to carry it with you because we had to sustain 20 minutes, they said, from the time we got into something to the time that we could have QRF to wherever we were was about 20 minutes because IEDs and, all that stuff. So we had to pack it all in. And, I was a light, 170, whatever, going over there in 2005 in Iraq. And I probably weighed, I don't know, to at least 120, 130 extra pounds on at least, depending on how long the mission was going to be. And it was just brutal. So now, of course, retired and all that stuff, and living the good life.
Right. Yeah. So, Scout Sniper, how long were you Scout Sniper for?
From late 2004 all the way through late 2007, before I decided that I was going to go be I wanted to save my knees and my back, and I'm like, I've got a great idea. I'll go kneel on a helicopter that has zero give, because that's going to be cool. And so I became a helicopter crew chief / door gunner. And we, that ended up leading into the deployment for Afghanistan. But it was, kind of like the Army Black Hawk, but it's just the old school Vietnam era Huey. But now it's got the big Cobra engines. It's 4-blade, not 2. It outruns. I mean, it can stay pace with the Black Hawk. So it's really fast helicopter. It's really upgraded. The Army's probably like, yeah, like it's kind of like an old beat up Black Hawk. But for us, it was like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. Right. But it was much better to ride than to have to walk all over Afghanistan. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, I can't imagine having a lift and a helicopter when you needed it. That's probably pretty convenient. My son, he's on active duty now, and he works in special operations aviation. He works on the C-130s that do the radar jamming.
Oh wow! Okay.
His career field, his job, he can actually work on helicopters. So he's really hoping on his next assignment that he gets a chance to work on. I think it's the MH-60s. He's really excited to potentially
the blacked out Black Hawks and all that stuff.
He's pretty pumped about that. But just hearing about what all he has to do, and I thought he was going to be working in aviation. And he was like, no, not in avionics. Like, I get dirty all the time. And I was like, well, I was kind of surprised. I figured you wire heads would have it easy. But he's like, no.
Yeah, no, especially not that everything in those helicopters are some form of like electronics, because it's all like glass cockpits. It's like a commercial jet, but it's all packed into this little weird boxes and things like that. And it's just every time they turn them on, it's like, okay, bring them out. We need, to jam something, and they'll come up and punch in their little codes and, fixes everything really quick. And sometimes they're like, yeah, no, this one's done. We go take all your stuff on to the next one because this one's not going anywhere. But it's, they stayed really busy, really busy.
So how long were you a crew chief before you retired?
Not long enough, but I, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025, 2026, 2027, 2028, 2029, 2030, 2031, 2032, 2033, 2034, 2035, 2036, 2037, 2038, 2039, 2040, 2041, 2042, 2043, 2044, 2045, 2046, 2047, 2048, 2049, 2050, 2051, 2052, 2053, 2054, 2055, 2056, 2057, 2058, 2059, 2060, 2061, 2062, 2063, 2064, 2065, 2066, 2067, 2068, 2069, 2070, 2071, 2072, 2073, 2074, 2075, 2076, 2077, 2078, 2079, 2080, 2081, 2082, 2083, 2084, 2085, 2086, 2087, 2088, 2089, 2090, 2091, 2092, 2093, 2094, 2095, 2096, 2097, from 2009 or 2008 to 2013, I was a crew chief, and then they came back from Afghanistan about a week before Thanksgiving in 2010, which was nice to be home for the one of the holidays. But they were nice enough, the Marine Corps was, to say, hey, you're good. You've been in long enough. You're going on a B billet. You're going to recruiting duty. I'm like, and I'm not, a behind the desk kind of guy too much, but I was like, okay, go on recruiting. We'll have to deploy, get some home life with my wife and things like that. And, it'll be a good change, but that's also what kind of jump started the fast track to getting medically retired as well, because that's when the body slowed down. It's like, okay, you played like you were 18 for all this time, and now you're going to take care of me because I'm no longer taking care of you. And so there was a few surgeries and things like that. A couple of discoveries that I didn't know existed, TBIs, concussions, things like that. And they're like, yeah, you know what? You've had a lot of fun. You've had a great career, but it's it's time for you to go. And I'm like, okay, and at the time I was excited, and then the door closed behind me that last day, and I'm like, that panic set in a little bit. I was like, oh no, now what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And and that kind of jump started a whole new degree of stuff, which was really exciting. Worked for the DEA, the Drug Enforcement, as an intel analyst and a evidence tech for, 3 years before I jumped into the position that I'm currently at, which is the case manager position at the Veterans Treatment Court here in San Antonio. And now it's a lot of giving back.
Yeah, let's talk about that. The Veterans Treatment Court. First of all, what is the Veterans Treatment Court?
Sure. The Veterans Treatment Court is basically a sub-specialty court within the normal criminal justice system that's designed specifically to help veterans, active duty, reservists, National Guard. If you are in or have been honorably discharged out of any piece of the DoD, we'll say, you're potentially eligible for the Veterans Treatment Court. We screen guys out depending on what their charge is. We only take misdemeanors, and then we have a felony side that takes care of the felony aspect. Our job is basically we get these vets for DWIs, family violence, something that relates to issues from deployments coming back, drinking themselves silly and all that kind of stuff. And we get them in this year-long program. A major portion of it is treatment-based. So we're going to get them enrolled in the VA, on base at substance abuse counseling. We're going to really get them. We're going to do everything in our power to get them to where there's not going to be a repeat offense later down the road. That's our goal. Once they successfully complete the program, their case is automatically dismissed, and their attorney and them can apply to have it expunged off their record, as long as it's not like their DWI, or they ran their car into a school or something like that because they were drunk at night or something like that. Then we can help them, but we'll get their case dismissed, but it's not going to be expunged. It's still going to be there. But that's basically what we do is we have them in this year-long program, track them through the entire year, make sure they're complying, and they've got certain requirements they have to do while they're in the program. Alcohol monitoring, breathalyzers, treatment, constantly treatment, and we get updates, probation. So it's pretty intense year for them, but the reward at the other side is, if they can stick with it, is huge.
Is it primarily ran by veterans? Is there a lot of veterans like yourself that are involved in the program on the other side of it, so that the connection there is veteran to veteran kind of?
Yeah, absolutely. The judge who is about to retire, but he is a 30-year JAG Army colonel, and he retired. He's about to retire. I think he's got 40 years as a judge or something like judge and lawyer, and I'm like, wow, yeah, it's time for you to go, sir.
Yeah.
You know, you've had a great run.
Yeah.
We only allow a total of 100 people in at a time because we want to keep the numbers down so we don't lose someone, you know, someone doesn't slip through the cracks. So we allow 100 at a time. Sometimes we'll flex and get like 110, but you know, that's case by case. The program director, who I report to, is a retired Air Force person. I'm the case manager, retired Marine, and then we have one court manager, and he's the only one who was not in the military, but he's been on the probation side for 30 plus years. So he's really versed, and he's our go-to guy.
Does it well.
Yeah, like on that side, because we've got to balance both. With the VA, the two people that we have that work directly for our program, but they're employed by the VA, are both retired military as well. And our probation officers that we assign to them while they're in the program are also retired military. So they get in like, I don't want to like crushed or overwhelmed by it, but they're constantly around vets. They're around, you know, fellow people who understand.
Yeah.
You know, it is. And we tell them, look, we're here, we get it, but we're also military. So understand that this is like that second chance, you know, thing for you. This is that not get out of jail free card, because you clearly not just here to hang out, but we'll do what we can, but we can't care more than you care for your own self.
Yeah.
But it's been, you know, great. We've graduated since the program's inception here, which is 12 years. It's a 12-year-old program. Graduated 750 vets and active duty service members that are now getting that fresh start. They're, you know, the cases are dismissed. They don't have to, you know, look over their shoulder, you know, getting pulled over like, oh, you've had a previous DWI. So now the cops are going to dig deeper, you know, and that kind of stuff. So it's a huge deal. But some really struggle with that. Oh, it's a year of my life. It's a year. But we try and tell them like, yeah, it's a year. You did more in the military, but to be away from this charge for the rest of your life, like you can't put a price tag on that.
No. Well, I mean, that's pretty good statistics. 12 years, 750 people. That's an average of 62 a year. I mean, that's 62 people you've given a second chance at life and sent back out into society to say, hey, go be successful. And I think it's even better that it's veterans running the program, because there's a different level of accountability and connection and understanding there. So I could see where maybe the success rate is a little higher than maybe a average program, just because you have that connection that you can look them in the face and say, I know.
Exactly.
I served too, like I know, but at the same time, we're to a higher standard, so I'm going to hold you accountable. And I think that's probably a huge part of success.
And I think so too. I think it's based on their, I mean, they have to know like I don't want to say the game is up, but it's done. You know, it's kind of like, it's time to be super serious. And, you know, in a lot of them, the best part too is to see how they come in. They're like on the ragged edge. They're not in treatment. They're not on, you know, medication if they need that. They're not in, you know, marriage counseling. They're completely unraveling. And then to see them on graduation day with their families, and, you know, they do it like a graduation speech. We, you know, give them a few, you know, 5 minutes or something to talk to the guys, men and women behind them getting ready to graduate. Like, hey, it's going to be tough. Gut it out. And see the success story of how they were to how they are. It's been so rewarding that it's, you know, I've always wanted to be the door kicker because it's just in my nature, you know, I want to be the first one in the door, you know, Rambo kind of thing. But, you know, doing this more and more, and my body's saying enough is enough more and more.
Yeah.
You know, it's really been rewarding to see the success. So it's just, it's really remarkable. And I wish there was more programs out there. I know we have 14 in Texas, and I know there's a few in different states, but it's not as prominent as I think it should be, because I think, just like there's a court for mental health, for drugs, for things like that, I think there's a desperate need for, even though Afghanistan, Iraq, all that stuff is winding down or, behind us, but it's not going to be the first war. It won't be the last one, unfortunately.
No.
So it's just going to be a matter of time. And if it doesn't stop, if we don't get ahead of it now, or well, I guess we should have got ahead of it back in Vietnam, World War II, and all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
But if we don't get a hold of it now, it's just going to get worse and worse. So I think there's definitely, I wish more states would adopt the program and start running it. But, then it becomes, unfortunately, funding. So, we're grant funded, but it's about money. And it's just like, that's a shame.
Is there one in Oklahoma?
I'm not 100% sure. I'm not exactly sure where all they are, but I know if anyone Googles Veterans Treatment Court, it will pull up. There's plenty of VA, Veteran Affairs, hospitals, things like that all over the place. But I think it becomes down to the judges have to buy off on it to have that specialty court within their normal court system.
Okay.
So they have their 1,500 normal cases, and now it's like, hey, yeah, but here comes these, an extra 100. And it's our judge, even though he's, military, was like, it's because certain specialty courts are just kind of a trade and street, and some people view it as like, oh, just because this person is, mentally ill, they're getting a free pass. And it's like, no, that's not exactly the case. And, they're veterans, they deployed, that's great. But, they, why do they get a different break? And it's like, well, it's different,
It's
same with law
of circumstances,
Mm-hmm.
like what you're about to say. Same thing with law enforcement. You're in a very different situation where the traumatizing effects of what you had to do or had to see or had to be around cannot be duplicated or replicated in any other profession. You just can't.
No.
So
Mm-mm.
Are they getting treated special? I would hate to say it like that. I would say there's special circumstances that require special level of understanding in order for them to get the same rehabilitation opportunities as another citizen while still focusing on the other issues that are at play, because that's just the bottom line. And we do the same thing for sexual assault victims. They get special treatment too because of the nature of the circumstance, and rightfully so, because it's very traumatizing.
Absolutely.
You have to address both issues. What went wrong and what happened, so that you can, that two-headed, front, and say, let's fix everything that's going on, and then put you back out there to be, successful. Because you fix one issue and you ignore the other, that is going to come back around and potentially cause problems. I'm just going to see your face again, and that's not what
100%.
So,
and that revolving door continues, and
that's not what we want at all for.
No, and
whether you're
not at all,
or someone who's been through a traumatic experience, once we've taken care of you, we don't, I never want to see you again, and that's for a good reason, because you're never in trouble, you never need anything, and you're out there in the world flourishing and being successful, and everything is going well for you. And I can see where people can kind of question that, but at the same time, they just don't understand the circumstances around it. And I think it's a really cool program. I'm going to check in and see if Oklahoma has something like that, and see if what else is going on with the program here, because I think it's a really cool program. Working on a podcast often means late nights editing, preparing for guests, and constant marketing. I need something reliable, great tasting, and of course, veteran-owned to keep me fueled and at my best. And Red, White, and Badass Brew coffee keeps me rolling. It doesn't matter if it's a long night of writing, preparing for the next podcast episode, or just that first hot cup in the morning. These guys have my back. Check them out today at redwhiteandbadassbrew.com and find out why their brews are as bold as the American spirit.
Yeah, and I think it's so beneficial, and weirdly enough, or I guess not weird, in an alarming way, I was in for just under 18 years, and until I saw the job posting on the job board and applied for it, got, interview, all that stuff. I had no idea the program existed.
Yeah.
And I think there's such a value, because there's young guys coming back off their first, second deployment. They're only 22, 23 years old, still on active duty. They came back, they couldn't sleep, or they're hanging out at the bar with some friends, start telling war stories, yada yada yada. Next thing they know, they're getting pulled over. No one's hurt or anything, but now they've got a DWI. And before, your career was not necessarily done, but you're done. I mean, there was no, okay, you got a DWI, you're busted down in rank, you're out you go, and best of luck. And now this program, I've seen, active duty people even complete this program, full support of their units, and they've been able to save their rank, save their careers, continue on through the military, and continue to live their life. And before, I knew countless people in 29 Palms that had DWIs and things like that, but because it's just, when you're out in the desert and not a whole lot else to do, but there just a lot of issues. And they could have, who knows what could have happened with them. We could have maybe got them involved in this way back then, and some may still be alive, maybe some may would have got the help they need. There's just so many factors that could have come into play. So I try and do my best to go to these bases and talk to old unit commanders that I know, and be like, hey, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but check this out. And some are like, whoa, and a lot of people have been referred, some not. And of course, it's up to the individual. I screen them out, say, hey, this is what it's going to be. This is what your next year of your life is going to look like. And some of them aren't, they've hit the rock bottom, but they're not ready to get the help or admit that, something's going wrong. And, we can't put a gun to their head and say, you're joining this program, whether you like it or not. But right. It's, and some get in the program and they just choose, like, what, this isn't worth it. And a year is too long without drinking. And, unfortunately, they become a statistic. But it's, we can only do so, what we can do. But I think it's an invaluable program. If there's, with all these states, there's countless places and opportunities for this program to exist. And I think it would be a miscarriage of justice to not implement it in certain states that don't have it right now. I think it would be, they're losing a huge opportunity, I think, to take care of the huge recidivism, I think that's how you say it, rate, the in and out of jail, back and forth thing. And it's just, it's sad to see.
So let's change it up and let's talk about your book, Terror to Triumph. I love the kind of the catch line that you have on there. Sometimes the toughest battles you have to fight are at home with yourself. What an awesome book. I'm going to show the cover right here for the audience to see once this is up on YouTube. Terror to Triumph. Right there's the book cover, Chris Whittemore. Chris, let's talk about the book. First of all, when did you decide to write a book? When was that day that it hit you and said, I'm doing it?
About 4 weeks into starting this job as a veteran treatment court case manager, because right when I started this job was about 3 weeks to the date, actually, before the initial COVID shutdown that put everyone basically in, not in isolation, but in, everyone working from home, the whole pandemic aspect. And I was sitting at home learning the job and, talking with my wife about, all the deployment stuff, the memories and things like that. And it weirdly, it started, some of the memories and the details started to fade a little bit. So I was losing that story aspect to where I could really put in detail and express what all took place over there. So my wife's like, well, you know what, you've got all this time, you're working from home now. The commute is about 50 feet from the bedroom to the kitchen table. There's no excuses. So I actually started writing it down in a story format, and I finished it, and I was like, wow, and it was really kind of therapeutic for me as well, to get all this stuff out and, on paper, I guess, if you will. But I mean, of course, it was typed up, but on paper. And my wife's like, so what are you going to do with it now? And I was like, well, it's there. So if I ever want to go back and check out the stories, or, talk about it or whatever, it's right here. And she's like, I think you can really help other people with, the good, the bad, the ugly, the things that you went through, mistakes you made, good things that you did. There's a need for those kind of books out there. And I'm like, well, you know what? So, and I did the whole, well, someone else will write that book. Someone else will do it. And she's like, I really think we should submit it to a self-publishing company and see if they'll pick it up and all that stuff. And I'm like, all right, you know what? Sure, whatever. This is never going to be published, so this is just going to be one of those things. Send it in. About 3 weeks later, hear it. They call me up and they're like, hey, the panel reviewed your book. We absolutely, love it. We want to publish it. I'm like, what? And, the whirlwind began. I wanted to really put in detail, because there's a lot of books out there, that talk about deployment stuff. There's, the Lone Survivor, the Chris Kyle books, the, all the movies, the just countless, Full Metal Jacket, all the way to, whatever, Navy SEAL, just whatever is out there. And I said, what's not out there though? And this is really what kind of made me push even harder for the book, is there's not a lot of stuff out there that talk about what happens, not on deployment, because there's tons of stuff out there like that, but what happens to the individual, male or female, families, friends, whatever, when they come back from the deployments. They've seen what they've seen. They're isolating away. They're drinking themselves to sleep every night. They're committing suicide at the rapid rate. They're all these domestic violence issues. They're ending up in prison. There's all these things, but no one really has written about why. And I said, you know what? Let me use my experiences, coming back from, initial fights in Ramadi, Iraq, before, pre-elections in all these cities. And, I wasn't sleeping. If I wasn't like intoxicated, there's no way I was going to sleep for more than an hour or two. Couldn't drive down the road. If I saw something on the side of the road, just reaction. And, so then of course you get embarrassed. You're like, I'm going to isolate. I'm not going to do anything. Well, now you're affecting your family as well, because you're isolating away. So it's just such a sad revolving door. And, so I published the book, and, then the I don't know what the wild thing is. My stories now became the world's, so everyone can read this book. And I've had, wild reviews, for so far it's, I think, 4.9 stars on Amazon, on Kindle, audiobook, for all the people who don't like to read, which I never thought I would do an audiobook, just because it's like, it's a book, read a book. But, a lot of people love the audiobook as well. I've had some great reviews. And the best part of it though has been the families and things like that, or vets that I hadn't talked to since they got out of the military back in 2007, picked up the book, read it, and they're like, wait a second, I know this guy. And then we start connecting and, helping each other out, doing the talking, over the phone if we need to, or whatever the case is. And, they've isolated away from their their kids and family, and their kids are alienated from them for the last 15 years because they don't get it. And they've read the book and be like, now, after all this time, it makes sense. And by no means do I think it's the answer to everything, but from Vietnam, some of those guys waited 40 plus years to get help. And I'm hoping that my book, showing that, hey, if I can do it, you can do it kind of mindset. And don't wait 40 years, don't wait 10 years, don't wait any years. I mean, if you know something is wrong, which coming back from a deployment and drinking for 5 months just to sleep for an hour, that's not normal. Like, it's not. And I tell people all the time, it's okay to not be okay. Like you said, I mean, if you saw some of the things you did over there, like the 9/11 firefighters, everyone who worked there, Oklahoma City bombing, all those people who worked there, I was like, they weren't okay. I mean, how could you be okay seeing that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
And I was talking in front of a bunch of judges and commissioners court about the book as well. And I said, if you are okay with seeing all that, and it's like, no big deal. No, who cares? Then go down to the local prison and turn yourself in immediately, because you are a psychopath. And you say that and they're like, but then the wheels start turning. You're like, wow, you know what? He's actually got a good point. And and I tell people too, like I deployed just like a lot of other people deployed. My stories are probably really similar to their stories, or, they went through a lot worse than I did, all that stuff. But I really think the book is invaluable for families, for military, active duty, or guys who have gotten out that are, stuck on that, I can't say anything, or I'm weak, that kind of thing. Or, everyone's going to look at me like differently, if I ask for help. And it's like, yeah, they're probably going to be proud of you, and your life is going to be 1,000 times better. Swallow the pride, be the big V word, vulnerable, and get out there and, take that first step. And once you get through that door, life is so much better on the other side. And that's kind of, how the book came to be. And it's, so far it's doing really well. A lot of it's word of mouth. I've created a website with the help of, a great guy over at Semper Fi Design. And we've created like an actual book website. But it's, it's just everything I can do. And then I get lucky and get on podcasts like this with you and, some of these others. And it's just been, it's been great. A lot of great reviews, and hopefully, more and more people will start picking that book up and, really, and for every one book, who knows? I mean, one book may not be the answer, but that one guy who reads it, it passes it on to the next guy, it might save that guy's life.
Yeah.
He might be like, and I don't think there's no figure data sales report that can, show the greatness of, if one thing saves one person's life, then who cares what the sales reports say? Yeah. Like, it doesn't make any difference. Like, that's kind of been my motivation for the book, and, getting it out there and, talking like, on podcasts like this. So,
right. Yeah, that was my motivation too, was when I wrote my book, I said, this is not going to be a New York Times bestseller. Number one, because I don't have the reach. Number two, it's probably not on that level, but, the Amazon reviews, the sales reports, the numbers and all that don't tell the story, and don't fulfill me in a way that the feedback has fulfilled me. The people who have reached out and been like, wow, man, you are on it. You're absolutely on it. You spoke to me about leadership like it hit my soul. I was like, man, that's exactly what I wanted to do. And, I had a guy reach out to me. He's currently on active duty, but he read the book and he was like, man, from the first page, I was just motivated. He's like, dude, I want to come on your podcast as like a guest host and ask you questions. And I was like, I'm game. I mean, let's.
That's awesome.
Not, man. I mean, I think that's cool that it's motivated somebody in such a way that they were like, I need to know more, which is the whole point of writing it. It wasn't to make a buku amount of money. And it
Yeah,
sounds like you're the exact same way. You know, if I can use my story, my platform to help others out, then I'm game to do that.
absolutely. And yeah, and I agree with you, 100%. I maybe deep down when it initially was like, oh, maybe this will hit the best, up there with Stephen King, and have not the reach and all that stuff whatsoever. But I think the more and more people that can, like yourself, if you reach 10, and those 10 tell 10, and whether you sell 50, 100, 300, 1,000, whatever, I think is would be phenomenal, obviously, but it's not the motivation. Just like yourself, is definitely to help others through the success and non-success of what you went through to prevent the next generation or whoever or the next group of leaders and all that stuff. Like, do not make these same mistakes, because this is the end result. And what's that say? If you don't learn from the past, you're doomed to repeat it.
Mm.
And I think that's what, like, your book and my book and other books that are similar to that are, hey, open your eyes and see what this is. And the aspect I think that drives me nuts is this isn't the first war, Iraq, Afghanistan. I mean, there's so many before. Sadly, there's going to be more after. But all these stuff that society has gone through, from the World War II vets, Vietnam, all the way up to us, our generation is like, we're still making the same mistakes in leadership and in all that. And I'm just like, how can we possibly be making these same mistakes after all this time? What needs to change, and hopefully more people like us will share their stories and get that word out there. And the generation that's coming up, that are the new leaders, the new generals, the new CEOs, the new whatever, will be like, wow, you know what, that something will click, and they'll be the ones who are willing to stand in the spotlight, because a lot of people just don't want to. They don't want to put themselves out there like you do on this podcast, or the authors who are writing these books. They don't want to put themselves in that spotlight, and they know what needs to be changed, but they're like, oh, someone else, like how I was before writing the book. Someone else will write the book, someone else will do the podcast, someone else will make the change, and then I'll be like, woohoo, finally. Yeah. But it's be that person to make the change, and I think you'll probably be chastised a little bit, as you're trying to make this big change. But the generations among generations you're going to affect by doing that, is, you can't put a price tag on that.
So this was Chris Whittemore, author of Terror to Triumph. I'm going to throw the book up there again for everybody to see. Awesome book cover. Sometimes the toughest battles you have to fight are at home with yourself. Chris, this was an absolute pleasure. The last question I have for you is what's next, and where can people find out more about you and the book?
For sure. The next is The Sky's the Limit. I'm actually in talks with gruntstyle.com. They're actually going to be putting the book in their stores nationwide. And I'm just like, when I heard that, I kind of like, my mind was blown. It really was. I was like, oh my gosh. But for book, mainly everything, because Amazon's the mecca of everything. Everything is Amazon.com, or you can go to Kindle, audiobook, or Audible, I guess, is the main audiobook platform. It's on Audible. And the book website is https://terror2triumphbook.com, and it will go to the website. And all I ask is, if you do audiobook, Amazon, order the book, whatever the case is, please read it, and then go. I appreciate the stars, but please throw down, good book, bad book, whatever the case might be. I'm open to good, bad criticism. I mean, it only helps me along the way. And I've been fighting it for a while, but I think there may be another book in the works coming out regarding the treatment court, what I've seen, vets in the criminal justice system, things like that, firsthand experiences, and hopefully get some people to collaborate and let me use their stories and really drive that home as well. So I think the sky's the limit, but please, I've got social media as well, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, all that stuff. Please reach out. You want to start a conversation? Shoot me a message. I'm always up for that. You want to talk about, vet stuff that you maybe, don't want to ask about, but you just want to talk about. I'm always here as well.
Chris, it was a pleasure, man. I'm looking forward to getting my hands on a copy of the book and reading it myself. I think what you're doing as a case manager is absolutely awesome, and I tip my hat to you, veteran to veteran, man. You're making me proud. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Congrats on the success. I think having your book in a grunt style store is just amazing. So just kudos. I think that's just awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I can't believe it's happening, but I just hopefully, it'll be, because now they're opening up these stores on bases in the exchanges, especially these like super exchanges, have grunt style stores within the exchange. So that's going to open up a whole nother level of things, So I think just the sky's the limit, and I think in anyone's walk, the podcast, the books, whatever, I tell people, whatever you want to do, don't let the gatekeepers tell you no. Push them out of the way, kick in the door, just like you did in the military. And the only thing stopping you is you.